All right. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Play Your Faves, the show where I take popular uh, TV show or movie or book or video game characters that you guys suggest, and I turn them into D&D character sheets so that you can actually play these characters in your local games. First things first, it's been a while. I've had a lot of stuff going on. I upgraded to a new computer, have a whole new rig, and so I apologize. Apparently, it's been like 5 months since my last one of these. So yeah, because of that, let's go over the rules I use for this thing. First things first, anything I use is going to not only be officially published material from Wizards of the Coast, but all the characters that I create are actually Adventurers League legal characters, meaning I follow the hit point rules, the stat ability score rules, and the rule of only one supplement other than the PHB. Those are my limitations there. All the characters are, if they are just a straight class, they are level 6. If they are multi-classed, they have a combined level of 7, just so that both get access to at least one feat, which is really helpful in replicating a lot of the more unique abilities. And I think level 6 is a good place to have a really nice character. They're not really underpowered or fragile like they can be at the very low levels, and they're not like almost gods like they can be at really high levels. 6 is a really nice place for both strength and growth, which most of the characters we deal with have both of those. So without any further ado, let's actually get to the character, which, if you've read the title of this video, is Tommy the Green Ranger from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So again, I have a character sheet for him. If you would like it, there will be a link down below to the actual character sheet itself. I host them on my Patreon. They're not locked behind paywalls or anything, so you can go there for free and download it if you want this exact sheet. So let's start off. I have Tommy Green Ranger as the name, simply because Tommy has been, at this point, he has been 5 different Rangers, along with a new, updated version of his suit, where he comes back as the Green Ranger as cameos in later Power Rangers. So I have to mention, this is Tommy the Green Ranger from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The abilities that I talk about in here are combination of his abilities as just the Green Ranger and his abilities when he was the evil Green Ranger, which he had a few extra things. He had a specific, he had this sort of the darkness that gave him a few extra powers that he never really showed later on this series when he was good. But I wanted this kind of, you can actually play this character as the evil Green Ranger or the good Green Ranger, or both. Have a green with evil subplot in your campaign. It's entirely up to you. So let's talk about how we built him. I made him a monk. for a number of reasons. First, all the Power Rangers are, especially in the Mighty Morphin era, it was very much martial arts was a really big focus of it. It's one of the reasons I started studying martial arts, was because I was a huge Power Rangers fan when I was real small. So Monk fits that idea in the fact that Power Rangers, when they're morphed, they all have a special weapon, but if you watch any Power Rangers, it's very rare for them to start out a battle with their weapon out. Generally, they will do hand-to-hand combat first, and then will bring out a weapon or so. And that's actually built into the original mythos of the thing, is when the first 5 Power Rangers were given their powers, they were told that they had to abide by this code, and one of the things was they're not allowed to escalate a fight. They're never allowed, and that was one of the things people always asked as like a joke, why don't they just get the Megazord and just smush everything? Well, it's because it's against the code of being a Power Ranger. That was the rules they had to follow. If they broke those rules, they might end up losing their powers and kind of being cast out from the Rangers. So having them be a monk, they can do unarmed stuff, but the subclass of monk I chose was the Kensei, which is it used to be there was a Kensei kit back in second edition D&D. That was a subclass of fighter. I believe there's a prestige class in third edition. But it's basically a Kensei. I've heard. I don't actually know. But it's been say you can roughly translate it as like sword saint or something like that. It's another name for a Kensei. But they are someone who focuses and hones themselves on a very specific weapon or a couple of weapons that they become almost mythical in their ability to use these weapons and be able to do amazing things with them. And so the Kensei fits really well for Power Rangers specifically, and generally, I mean, and the Green Rangers specifically, but because their weapons are a major part of their character. A lot of the weapons will actually hint at some of the personalities of the Ranger itself. And the Green Ranger specifically, his Dragon Dagger is such a massive part of his character, whether it's because it can control the Dragon Zord, or it actually, playing melodies on it can actually enhance his shield and things like it's such a huge part of his character, unlike the other Rangers where, you know, their weapons are you know, very much a part of their characters, but they're not nearly as intrinsically tied to them as they are with the Green Ranger. So yeah, it's monk, human, just because it gives you access to an additional feat, which is always useful in these. And then I actually chose Far Traveler as the background, because in the show, Tommy's actually a new student that comes in partway through season 1. And I didn't really find any other this, but this just, it kind of makes sense. He was from a different place. He was new. Everyone was looking at him. So I just thought Far Traveler just fit really well. So going from there, let's talk about stats. Monks themselves, from a mechanical standpoint, are Dex and Wisdom. Because Dex is what they use for all their attack rolls, and that Wisdom is what they use for all their saving throws. And both of those actually contribute to their armor class. So monks are always going to have Dex and Wisdom. From a Power Rangers standpoint, I've never viewed Tommy as an incredibly like strong buff character. Jason always had big muscles and stuff like that. Tommy though was very agile. He would do all these flying kicks and jump spins and things like that. He was a very agile martial artist, and so I really do think dexterity fits a little bit better than just strength as far as his attacking ability, because a lot of his power for everything he does is an incredible amount of control and accuracy versus just brute strength. And you can see that when he fights out of his suit, and you can see it when he fights morphed. Because even the suit actors from Sentai, none of them were big, buff, burly guys. They were all kind of skinny, but could do really cool things because they're very talented martial artists. So, and stuntmen. So yeah, we put the two highest as dexterity started as a 16. Wisdom went up to 16 at level 4 with the ability score improvement, just to kind of balance those out. And I'll show you some other things in a little bit as to why wisdom needs to be high too. Constitution. This is the morphed version of Tommy. I have yet to come up with a really good D&D method that's AL legal to have them morph in D&D. I'm sure it's out there. I haven't come up with it, and I haven't seen someone else, especially for such a low-level character. There's a few higher-level abilities you can use that will let you kind of transform and change how things work. But at level 6, you're kind of limited to like the druid's beast shape, and that's about it. Yeah, this is the morphed version. Morphed Power Rangers in general can take a hit. They can get, cut up and beat up over and over again and just get back up. Gave Constitution for the extra hit points and just the ability to take a hit. Intelligence is rather even. Wisdom, again, really high. And then something that I've always liked about Tommy throughout his entire career, he is a very charismatic character. In the beginning, Kimberly is smitten by him. She finds him very attractive. Throughout the entire series, he's very good at interacting with people. He eventually becomes the leader of the Power Rangers, and is able to lead very effectively, and charisma just seems like a natural fit for the Green Ranger, especially if you're going the evil part. He was a very intimidating character as an evil ranger, and he terrified the Rangers because they'd never fought another Ranger. They didn't know it was possible. So charisma just fits really well. And then again, I lowballed strength just because that's what I had to do. I had to put an 8 somewhere. And again, he's just not going to be using it much. It's dexterity is what he's going to be doing the most of. As far as skills, acrobatics is a duh. I put athletics in there because while he may not be uber strong, moving mountains, I mean, look at JDF. Jason David Franks, the actor that played him. Look at him in the show. Like, he wears like sleeveless stuff all the time. He's got some guns there. And martial arts in general, even if you are not a very strong person, you will develop some musculature just from using your muscles over and over again. So I did think training in athletics made sense, even though, again, his specialty is more control and agility versus brute strength. Insight is actually from his Far Traveler. And it, again, makes sense as not only a leader of the Power Rangers, but also just as a martial artist in general, the ability to read your opponent. And he would go toe-to-toe with, like, Goldar unmorphed and would be able to get out of these fights. And part of that was his own martial ability, but another part was being able to know when to dodge and when to get out of the way so that he could. And that's all insight, in my opinion. And then perception, again, obviously very perceptive person, except when he just gets randomly kidnapped by Rita. But whatever, plot point. So we have that there. As far as stuff he's trained in, this is all just monk stuff, and then a little bit of Kensei. You get the calligrapher set, but it's nothing fancy. Monks can use monk weapons. This is all stuff. He's really fast just because being a monk. And then these are the attacks. I have. He has a dagger, which we're going to use as the dragon dagger, which is his main weapon. And then SOD is the Sword of Darkness, which I've classed as a scimitar here, because if you look at the actual sword, it has a very deep curve. So it does fit the idea of a scimitar, even though you could argue it's much like a longsword as well. You can go either way with it. But due to the fact that in the show, when he has it, he uses it in conjunction with his dragon dagger. Scimitars and daggers are both light weapons, so this allows him to use both and be able to kind of mimic the abilities he had in the show. And then also the unarmed attacks, because again, monk. This is how I always show key whenever I play, is I'll have the key and then I just put zeros there, so when I'm playing I can just fill them in and erase them with pencil, so I know how much key I have left. And then these are all the different key abilities. Now this is where we start going into replicating some of the abilities he had in the show, and the first ability that has always stuck with me is when he was fighting the Rangers. He had this ability where he would play his dragon dagger and it would power up his shield, the dragon shield that he wore, the gold thing on his chest, to the point where you would see like Jason shooting at him with his blade blaster, and it would just reflect off as he just walked forward until he got close enough to attack. And so one of the ways that you can kind of simulate that is actually one of the Kensei abilities, which is why I chose this subclass and class. They call it Agile Parry. And what it is if you make an unarmed attack with your attack action, so instead of using the dagger or the Sword of Darkness, you just make an unarmed attack. You make a kick or something with your attack action. You can increase your armor class by 2 as long as you're still holding a Kensei weapon, which translates really well to the dragon dagger being there and just upping his defense. So I thought that was a really great way to add that without having to use magic or something that's very limited. This is literally every turn you can do that if you want. You sacrifice being able to use one of your Kensei weapons, but so that's that. And then there's I should probably go into what the Kensei things are. So Kensei weapons are very special weapons that you choose to specialize in. At 3rd level, you have 2. It has to be a melee and a ranged. And then at 6th level, you get a 3rd. So for the Green Ranger, we have the dagger, because again, his dragon dagger. This scimitar is going to be his Sword of Darkness, so he can use both of those. And then I had to use a long range weapon, and he doesn't really. But there are instances, there's at least one instance where he gives his dragon dagger to Kimberly, and she fires it from her power bow. So I figured longbow is fine. You're not really going to use it that much with this build, but it's part of it. So like I said, Agile Parry, and then for that shot that Kim took, this is a bit of a stretch. But the Power Rangers do every so often throw their weapons. I don't, off the top of my head, I can't remember Tommy throwing the dragon dagger. But Kensei shot basically means as a bonus action, you can you can make a ranged attack. And it doesn't have to be with a ranged weapon. So he could throw his dragon dagger and just do a little more damage. Kind of like what happened with when Kimberly shot the dagger out of her bow. So that was just kind of a cool thing. And the magic Kensei weapon just means they do magic damage. They can get around immunities to non-magical weapons. The rest of these don't really apply too much. I mean, Step of the Wind makes them even faster. Patient Defense could be substituted instead of Agile Parry for that shield thing. Death Strike is just some extra damage he can do, which again is a very Power Rangers thing where they attack and then sparks fly. So, but as far as replicating specific abilities he had, none of them really apply. They just make the character more fun to play. Is all. Another thing that Power Rangers used to do all the time, and especially the Green Ranger when he was evil, is they'd like jump off of the buildings and then come down and land. So slow fall will basically mean that he can make these really big leaps and not take as much or any damage with that. So going a little bit further, this is just the default stuff with 5 gold that you start with. You're a little bit shy of the money you would need to buy a scimitar, which I'm going to actually look up here. How much a scimitar costs? Because I've forgotten completely. There we go. Sorry, this is slightly boring. It's 25 gold for a scimitar. So by level 6, you will have 25 gold. It's just how you can't go that long without making to 20 gold. So you would want to buy a scimitar eventually, or pick up one during an adventure or something to have that sort of darkness if you want to play that way. Otherwise, again, because Kensei weapons are considered monk weapons, which means they use your monk martial arts die. Even though you're using a dagger, which is normally a D4 damage, because it's a monk weapon, it bumps it up to D6, and it gets higher and higher the further you go. So using a dagger is not nearly as limiting as it is with other classes where you're just doing a D4 damage. The other stuff, Dungeoneer's Pack and Darts just come with the monk. Set of Traveler's Clothes from Far Traveler. Flute maps. And then you're supposed to have something from your homeland. And because he's a high school student that transferred, I thought a class ring would make a lot of sense for him to have. There's nothing about it in the show that mentions he has a class ring. I don't even think they mention his previous school ever, or if they do, it's a one-off thing. But it fit with it, and again, because this is AL legal, we want to kind of fill in everything as much as we can. So this is all background stuff that you can play with. And then I showed a little bit before. I took a feat at first level because the human variant that gave him Magic Initiate Druid. I picked Druids specifically because it uses Wisdom as its spellcasting ability, and that's really useful, seeing as the monk already needs a high Wisdom score for other things. So this just makes that much easier, and this will let us be able to deal with more abilities that he had. One of the things he could do with this Sword of Darkness is he would take it and jam it into the ground, and there'd be this kind of line and then an explosion right underneath the person he was attacking. I think he used it on Jason most often. Um, but I didn't really have a druid cantrip that replicated that perfectly. But Frostbite just does a kind of a burst of frost damage on someone, and so I figured that's pretty close because generally the explosion didn't kill everybody. It was normally just aimed at a single person. So Frostbite is kind of that sort of darkness stab thing. Again, I'm reaching a little bit here, but without the ability for me to let him summon a Dragon Zord somehow in D&D, I gotta reach a bit. Thunderclap was just misspelled. First of all, Thunderclap was simply the idea that the Green Ranger himself was constantly outnumbered, and he fought all 5 Power Rangers when he was evil, and was always able to attack multiples of them at the same time. So Thunderclap is literally just kind of an area burst attack, and it just makes sense that he would have this ability to attack everyone around him, and magic was the best way to simulate that. And then the one spell you get as part of Magic Initiative, I chose Ice Knife specifically to simulate the green energy ball attack he has. He uses it against the Power Rangers. I don't think we ever see him use it again once he goes good. But what it was, he just kind of go boom, and fires this green energy ball that explodes. And I was originally thinking something along the lines of like chromatic orb or something, but it only hits one target. Ice Knife is a spell I used. It's in Xanathar's guide, so that's how I get my +1, because Kensei is also in Xanathar's. But Ice Knife was an ability that first appeared in the Elemental Evils supplement. And what it is, you literally just throw a knife, it hits someone, and then explodes to do area damage, which is exactly what the green energy ball was. You just like boom, and then it would go and it would explode, and there'd be huge explosion. All the Power Rangers would jump up and fly in every which direction. Then they'd be on the ground going, and then would talk like this all the time. Because no one could see. Whoa, that was not fun. Woo. Because no one could see their mouths. They had to do that. Anyway, so that basically is Tommy, the Green Ranger. Now, I did put some personality traits. As I do every time, the ideals is always a quote that I find from the character if I can find them. And this is a quote, I can't remember what season it's from. I believe it's the first season. Probably, if I had to guess, after he loses his powers. But the quote is, "It's not just the costume and powers that give me strength. It's who and what I am inside that really empowers me." And that really is kind of the core of Tommy's characters. He's always striving to do the right thing, to always kind of fight evil, even when it's, bad for him. A personality trait is, I will always help my friends even when it hurts. There are countless times where he puts his well-being and sometimes his life on the line to help his friends. Especially when he gains his powers back, but they're fluctuating and they could give out at any second. He would continually be told by Zordon and Alpha, "Hey, you can't go out there. Your powers aren't stable. You're going to die." And he would constantly be fighting that up until the point where the powers finally just disappeared. And that's where the bond comes in, is that idea is later on, he has to be really careful because randomly his powers might just shut off. And then something that comes up throughout his entire career as a Power Ranger, not just as his initial stint from Mighty Morphin through Turbo, but it comes up again in Dino Thunder, and even is hinted at a little bit in the most recent crossover for Super Ninja Steel. Is he still always thinks back and considers that thing that he started out as an evil ranger, and it makes him doubt his decisions every so often. You'll have these episodes where he has to wrestle with his own, feelings of, well, maybe the evil me, maybe there's something to that. Maybe the reason she chose me is that I have something evil inside of me, and she just let it out. And when you go into the comics, you have even more of that with Lord Drakon becoming this evil tyrant and having to fight a bunch of different versions of Tommy. So yeah, it felt like a really good flaw for him. Yeah, that is Tommy the Green Ranger. Again, I'm super sorry this has taken so long. These specifically take a lot more work than things like the in-depth D&D 5e guides or the comprehensive whatever it is. I'm coming up with a new name, I swear. Simply because I make thumbnails for this. I have to do research and build a whole character sheet. It's exhausting. So that's why it hasn't happened. But like I said, I'm slowly getting back into the swing of things. I'll try to have more of these. However, I do have questions for you guys. First things first, this is how I made Tommy the Green Ranger. In the comments below, let me know how you would make Tommy the Green Ranger. Would you stick with Monk? Would you go with another class? Would you make him a fighter or a wizard? Or how would you go about making Tommy the Green Ranger and replicating some of the things you can see on the TV show? Also, in the comments below, what characters do you want to see me build next? They can be literally from anywhere. However, if it's a really obscure character, pick someone that has a wiki I can read or something. So if I'm not familiar with them, I can at least look them up. But I've been doing this for years, where I just make D&D versions of characters, and I've done everything from Bigby from the Telltale series that was based on the fairy tales. I can't remember what it's called. The Wolf Among Us, I think, or something like that. Anyway, I've done that character who was a private eye based on the Big Bad Wolf. I even made Peppa Pig into a D&D character. So the sky's the limit. Just let me know in the comments below what character you want to see next on Play Your Faves. Anyway, that's all for me, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.